Hey guys, Tech717 here, talking to you about seasoning a humidor today. I've seen a lot of videos like this on the internet. I know there's a lot of really great ones out there, so for that reason I wasn't really planning on doing one of those. The opportunity arose, and you know, there's some great videos out there, but a couple of them have some things in there that I disagree with, or maybe that I think a little bit differently on. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and do a video on how to season a humidor. And combined with that, I'm also going to do a review on this new humidor here. This is the Artisan Outlaw humidor from Holt's Cigar Company. A new cigar company that I'm trying out, and we'll see how this humidor works out. First off, let's talk about what we've got in front of us. So this is what you're going to need. Obviously a humidor. A bowl of distilled water. A sponge. You could also use a lint-free cloth. I prefer to use a sponge. I'll tell you why in a little bit. A plastic bag here. A hydrometer, and the humidifier that the humidor came with. So, step one, what we're going to do is we're going to open this thing up, we're going to wet down the inside of this with the distilled water to try and kind of prime that wood and get it moist initially. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we're going to do here is you're going to go ahead and first remove any dividers or trays that you might have in there. Take the sponge. And this is the reason why I like the sponge over the cloth, is that the sponge has these nice rigid edges, and those work really well for getting into the corners of the humidor without having to press and get a bunch of excess water in there, pressing a cloth into the corners. So what you want to do is get it wet just to where it's not dripping. And then go ahead and carefully wipe down all the surfaces, including the lid, and then don't forget any dividers or trays you might have as well. Alright, so a couple things you want to watch out for is, first off, you want to kind of go with the grain of the wood. You don't want to cause any snags on the sponge that's going to get a bunch of material in there. At any points in there that make it feel a little rough, you can go ahead and kind of use a little bit of a dabby motion to avoid that. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we don't oversaturate the wood. So, keeping the sponge, like I say, just to the point where it's not dripping. We're just trying to lightly coat that wood. We're not trying to leave any puddles in there, so just keep that in mind. Alright, so now here's where there's some disagreement, I guess. I don't know, a few different options of what you can go ahead and do at this point here. What some people would do at this point is go ahead and saturate that sponge one more time, but a little bit heavier than you would if you were wiping it down. Take your plastic bag, sit it in there, set the sponge in, and what we're going to do is we're going to close that lid and leave it sit for 24, maybe even 48 hours. And what we're trying to do there is we're trying to get the wood that's just been saturated with all that water to kind of even out. Basically, the water isn't perfectly even throughout the wood. It's not perfectly distributed. So what we want to do is let it sit, and it just kind of expands and contracts a little bit. Now, that works great. If you want to go ahead and do that, by all means go ahead. What I prefer to do is I don't really care to leave the sponge or the cloth in there for that long period of time. What I find is that sometimes it makes it give it a little bit of musty smell. Even in a clean environment like this, I prefer not to. So what I'd like to do is take this bowl, which has still quite a lot of that distilled water in there, set that in there, and then again you want to make sure you set it on that that plastic bag in there. Just go ahead and close the lid on that and leave it sit like that for 24, maybe even 48 hours, like I say. Just depends on kind of what environment you live in. If you're in a particularly dry climate, and you might want to check it again after only 24 hours. So that's what I like to do. Go ahead and shut that thing and go ahead and leave it sit like that. That's going to be step one. Step two is going to be where we open it up, pull our bowl out, pull our bag out, and we're going to do the exact same thing, because these things really absorb quite a lot of moisture into that wood. And what really happens when you've got your humidor working properly is you've got a constant expansion and contraction of the wood, the cigars, and your humidifier, because they're all working kind of like this sponge. It's all working together to kind of keep that moisture evenly distributed. Your cigars, when you put them in there, already have moisture in them. Your humidifier that you put in there already has moisture in there, and then now that your humidor is seasoned, it also has moisture in there. So everything is working together, and it's absorbing and releasing that moisture back and forth. Alright, so after we've done step 2, and we've done that exact same thing over again, we've put the water back in and we're going to let it sit for another 24 to 48 hours. At that point, it's pretty well seasoned. So what we want to do is open it back up, take our bowl of water back out, go ahead and charge up our humidifier. And this is the one that came with the humidor. It comes with a lot of the mid to low grade style humidors. And it's basically just a foam sponge, if you will. So you're going to soak this probably 20 to 30 minutes. They usually have directions. And then that's going to basically act as your humidification device. And they're okay. I prefer to use a gel humidifier. They're a little bit more consistent. They last a little bit longer because as soon as this one dries out, you got to recharge it again. The gel humidifier is a little bit easier. Obviously, the best thing to do would be to get an electric humidifier. That's a little overkill for a small humidor like this. So I'll probably use a gel humidifier. So what we're going to do then is, now we've got it seasoned up after the second time that we've gone through and seasoned it. At that point in time, we're going to go ahead and throw our cigars in it, throw our humidifier in it, and very importantly, we put a hygrometer in there because we want to be able to monitor the humidity level and find out exactly how our cigars are doing, because we really don't want to open it up and have a dry cigar because things go wrong. Humidors leak moisture, all different things that can go wrong there. So what I'm going to do is, that was actually stage 2 for me. I've already done the first seasoning on this humidor. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put the water bowl back in here, and I'm going to let this thing sit for 24 hours. And then after that, I'm going to pull it back out. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick review on it in the second half of this video and tell you how it all worked for me, and we'll go from there. Alright guys, we're all set. This thing's all seasoned up. Since we last talked, I pulled the bowl of water out, put the humidifier and the hydrometer back in there. It held for 24, probably 48 hours. Went ahead and threw some cigars in there. As you can see, got a couple in there. It's held humidity for about a week and a half or so. Everything's going really well. So, just to recap here on our steps for seasoning the humidifier. Step 1, we want to go ahead and we want to wet that thing down with distilled water all the way through, nice and even. We want to put some sort of moisture in there, whether it's a bowl of water or a soaked towel or a sponge in there. Let that thing sit for 24, 48 hours. Let that water just permeate and even out throughout. Step 2, gonna do the exact same thing. Repeat step 1. Pretty simple there. Step 3, you pull that out. Now everything's pretty well evened out. You throw a hygrometer and a humidifier in there. Let that sit 24, 48 hours. As long as everything checks out, you're good to go. Just like we are here. I know I said I was going to talk a little bit about this humidor. I'm not going to do any fancy pictures or anything like I usually do, just because it's pretty straightforward and there's not really a whole lot to talk about. It's a good humidor. It looks pretty decent. I like the finish. It's got kind of a, almost like a tortoise shell or like an eggshell type finish on it. Nothing too crazy. It's pretty nice looking, you know. I like the color of brown. It's a little bit dark color of brown. I like the finish on it. It gives a little bit of texture for when you're opening and closing the lid. The other thing that I like is this edge here is nice and rounded, and that provides for a nice, snug, but smooth, easy to open and close fit in the lid. Other than that, I got no problems with it. It's not a super high-end humidor or anything by any means. I think it's probably pressed board and veneer construction, but that's okay. I think I got it on special for about 25 bucks, and I think they even threw in free shipping from Holt Cigar Company. So I'm pretty happy with it. Now you know how to season a humidor. If you're interested in this humidor, I'll go ahead and I'll throw the link in the description as always. Hope this has been helpful for you guys. And as always, happy smoking.